Coming up on this episode, I'm joined by my writing colleague at Man Hoops Griffin Gamble to kind of do a recap of the Warrior offseason, grabbed his opinions on the big Jordan Poole-Chris Paul trade, the drafting of Trayce Jackson-Davis and Brandin Podziemski, the free agent signings of Cory Joseph and Dario Saric, plus a look ahead to this Warrior season, general expectations, what we most want to see from the Warriors early in the season, who we're most excited to watch play. Of course, the Warrior basketball starts on Saturday against the Lakers in the preseason opener. So looking forward to that. But in the meantime, enjoy this chat between Griffin and I. Alrighty, welcome Griffin. How are you, mate? How's your day been? Been up to too much?
Nothing much. It's going good. I'm excited that the NBA season's right around the corner. Happy to be on here, so thanks for having me.
No worries. Good to have you, mate. Yeah, of course, the NBA preseason has just started with the Minnesota Timberwolves taking on the Dallas Mavericks. I was just telling you that it was on at 3 o'clock in the morning my time, so I probably wasn't quite going to get up and watch that. If it was the Warriors, maybe, but yeah, for a preseason game between those two teams, not quite. Anyway, let's talk some Warriors. So I want to rewind here, take you back to the start of the offseason, to June, to draft day, the Chris Paul, Jordan Poole trade. Just wanted to get your initial thoughts on that deal and how your opinion may have kind of transformed since then.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, if you've ever read any of my stuff, you know I'm a huge Jordan Poole guy. So when the news came through, I was a little disappointed, just because I thought we were going to stick it out with him. I know all the off the court issues with Draymond, but I really thought we were going to stick with it. I just think that we're going to miss him a lot more than people suspect. Played in all 82 games last year, second lead scorer. I think when Steph was out, we were about 500 with Jordan kind of leading the way. So I'm just personally, I was a little disappointed. And then obviously getting back a guy that we've been kind of butting heads with over the years, and Chris Paul was definitely strange, but I think I saw a couple tweets today about how the locker room's adjusting to it and just how upfront Chris Paul is and his veteran leadership that I'm starting to come around to it. But at first I was a little disappointed just because JP's my guy, but I'm coming around to it for sure.
Yeah, fair enough. Do you think that, at least in the short term, obviously the Warriors did this move for a win now move, thinking that Chris Paul can be more of a contributor this season. Do you think that that is the case, or would you have preferred to have Jordan Poole this season coming up?
Great question. I mean, obviously, yeah, CP with how little time he has left, it's gonna be win now for us. He's obviously been chasing that ring for a long time, and he thinks he can get it with us. But I mean, it's a tough question. But I think, yeah, hopefully, Chris is the answer this season. Um, but Jordan also, in that finals run was definitely a big part of our team, especially that first round against Denver. He had some monster games. Obviously, I know this last year's playoffs wasn't great, but yeah. So I guess to answer your question in a roundabout way, I hope Chris Paul is the answer to our win now problems, but I still might lean Jordan on that one.
Yeah, fair enough. I did do an article on Blue Man Hoop a couple of days ago looking at the players, former players from the last couple of seasons that the Warriors will miss the most. And Jordan Poole was obviously on my list, and I do agree with you that his availability, for starters, the fact that he played all 82 games, obviously a big factor
Mm-hmm.
there. And then just his scoring off the bench. I think that might be less of an issue. Obviously, Chris Paul's not going to necessarily replace Jordan Poole's 20 plus points per game. But with his playmaking, I think the team as a whole will be able to replace that. But the availability thing, particularly when you're replacing a 24-year-old with a 38-year-old, is obviously the biggest factor. Obviously, that night with the draft, the Warriors taking Brandin Podziemski with the 19th overall pick, trading Patrick Baldwin Jr. for the 57th overall pick, which they used on Trayce Jackson-Davis. The latter particularly was another kind of win now move, with Jackson-Davis having played 4 years of college at Indiana and being 23 years old. Do you think that was the good move for the Warriors, or were you a little bit disappointed they passed on Cam Whitmore, who was slid in the draft and ended up going 20 to Houston? Did you have many thoughts on that?
Oh yeah, I had written down Cam Whitmore. Yeah, he I thought he was a top five talent, and then the injury concerns I understand, but I thought he would have fit perfectly with us. Unfortunately, we went in a different direction, but with Pods, I think he's got great IQ. I mean, that's just something you can't teach. His pass, you saw it in the summer league, the passing. He rebounds really well for a guard. My only concern with him is just his consistency as a shooter. He's got that nice lefty stroke, but I really want to see him be elite from the 3 point line to see him get in the rotation. And then, yeah, like you said, Jackson Davis. I'm from Minnesota, obviously, so Big Ten's huge around here. So I saw a lot of Jackson Davis over those 4 years. Um, he's undersized for his position, but really athletic, very good defender. I mean, I expect to see if he does play a little bit. I expect to see him blocking a lot of shots. Something that we've definitely struggled with. We don't get that with Loon. Loon gets all the rebounds, but Loon's not really protecting the rim. So I think that could be a nice piece. Other than that, I mean, I just had written down that I'm really excited for Lester as well.
Mm.
I think Lester, we got him on that good deal this summer. I'm really excited to see him and maybe Pods kind of battle it out for a position there off the bench.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, with the injury to Corey Joseph early here in training camp, maybe there's a spot open early in the season for one of those two guys to come in and play a role. And obviously Jackson Davis, as you speak about, being 23 years of age, more mature player, 4 years at college, maybe he's more ready to go than obviously what many others in his draft class would be. There's a bit of speculation about his height kind of thing. It was interesting, I've seen people say 6'9", 6'10". He was actually listed at 6'8" on the official Warriors training camp roster. So he is smaller for his position. But as I've been saying all offseason, I think the Warriors are targeting big men who fit their style of play rather than necessarily just genuine size and height and athleticism. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. Moving from the trade to the draft to the free agent signings. So the Warriors obviously picked up Corey Joseph, as I just mentioned. And then Dario Saric was a big pickup for the Warriors. He's now the tallest player on the roster at 6'10". What did you make of those two signings? And was there a player or two you were disappointed that the Warriors didn't get that was, realistically available?
Yeah, definitely. Sarge is a great pickup. I think CP mentioned it yesterday in one of his interviews because he played with him in Phoenix. How just good of a teammate Sarge is. He's a great teammate, good veteran, good locker room guy. He obviously can stretch the floor, and like you said, if he's our tallest guy and he can stretch the floor, that bodes well for us. So I think he brings a little bit of that Otto Porter Jr. role. I think that we were really missing last year that maybe people didn't talk about in the offseason. Otto Porter was huge for that championship run. So I think Sarge brings a lot of that to our team. And then yeah, Corey Joe. Corey Joe's just good depth at the point guard position. Steph's not going to play all 82. Chris isn't going to play all 82. Clay's probably not going to play all 82. So, having a guy like Corey Joe who's been around the league for a long time, kind of a journeyman, I think he brings good depth. As far as players that I was disappointed, I thought maybe Pat Bev would be a good one. He signed, I think, like a little $3 million deal. And if it wasn't for Corey Joe, maybe like a Pat Bev off the bench. Torrey Craig was another one that I was really interested in. Kind of plays like that Otto Porter Jr. role. But other than that, I wasn't too mad with how free agency went. I saw Oubre went to the Sixers on a really cheap deal. So I didn't know if there was any interest in that and like a really cheap deal coming back or not, because I still love Oubre. But other than that, I'm really happy with the Sarge and Corey Joe pickups.
Yeah, absolutely. The Oubre thing was, I mean, the Warriors reportedly want an extra wing now with their 14th roster spot. So he would have been, I guess, the most talented player left available in the last few weeks here to fill that kind of gap. Torrey Craig was another one, obviously, earlier in the offseason in the free agency window where he was, I know across Twitter, Warrior fans were desperate for the franchise to get their hands on him. And again, he would have filled that kind of wing role. So talking of the 14th roster spot, who do you think the Warriors should target with that? Obviously, they've got a bunch of guys on training camp deals here. Rudy Gay is probably the most prominent one, and I've found his kind of strong presence at Media Day as somewhat of a surprise, given that he had his own press conference. A number of the veterans were asked about him as well. He seems to be kind of the main one at the moment. Is there anyone that you think of the guys on training camp deals, or even someone that is still a free agent outside the organisation that they should be targeting?
No, I think you hit it on the head. Rudy Gay kind of seems to be the one for the Warriors. I've wanted Rudy Gay for like a really long time as a free agent. I think he would have fit perfectly on some of our other teams. And so I think he's going to be the guy. Like I saw Ronnie McGruger, and with his past with Clay and all that stuff, I don't think he's really going to make the roster for us. So I'm really leaning Rudy Gay. I know he's a bit up there in age, but again, if we're going to win now, why not have a guy like that in your locker room for sure?
Yeah. Do you think that the Warriors should be targeting a wing here, or like what were your thoughts regarding their interest in Dwight Howard and another big man? Because Draymond said in his press conference that another big man wouldn't hurt, and then specifically focused on the Lakers series last season. They obviously lost in the second round, and the lack of size that they had there. Are you comfortable with another wing being added rather than a big man?
Yeah, great question. I didn't really understand the Dwight Howard thing because I think, like you had mentioned earlier in the podcast, it's we've tried the days of just getting someone with size, and it doesn't really work for us. Just the style of play and just kind of trying to plug in a big man doesn't really work. You got to be able to pass, got to be able to set great screens, got to be able to maybe stretch the floor a little bit. So I mean, if it ends up being a wing player, I think it's just got to be the best available and who's the best fit for us. And I think honestly, that's probably Rudy Gay.
Yeah, fair. I'm starting to come around to the fact that we've just got enough big men. Like there's not the 7 footer on the roster at all, but there is Loon, there is Saric, there is Dre, there is Jackson Davis, and of course there is Usman Gruber. And I think once the Gruber two-way
Yeah.
contract happened, I think that was the end of any possibility of the Warriors using the 14th roster spot on another big and potentially a genuine 7 footer. Anyway, regular season is obviously coming up here in a few weeks' time. What's the first thing that you want to see from the Warriors when the regular season gets underway, whether it be from a play style perspective or anything?
Yeah, I think really it just comes down to effort and consistency for me. Personally, like being a fan first of this team, we've seen over the years that they've been able to kind of switch it on and off because they've had such great teams. I think those days are gone, especially with how good the West is. There's no more taking nights off, and last year was just a complete roller coaster.
Yeah.
Not being able to win on the road, those struggles. So I really just want to see the effort be there from day one. I know guys are old, and I know it's hard to get up for like a Wednesday game in Portland or something, but I just really want to see the consistency be there, especially from the young guys who might be in and out of the rotation. And then obviously defense. I think defense is gonna really, really be important for us this season. We know the offense is there, but can guys like Kaminga and Moody come in and shut down other teams' best players is going to be interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. The defense I think is the biggest key, and Steve has already looked at
Mhm.
that early in training camp. He suggested that defense is, and returning to a top 10 defense is the first point of business for the Warriors in training camp, and specifically looked and focused on Gary Payton II, and having a full and healthy Gary Payton II for the whole season will be really important and
Mhm.
a key factor in that, specifically given that Draymond is going to miss the start of the regular season here. There's probably going to be a little bit more pressure, I suppose, on the likes of Gary Payton II and those, Andrew Wiggins, the perimeter defenders, without having Dre behind them, I suppose, early in the season. Which player are you kind of, most looking forward to watching this season, most excited for as we get underway?
Yeah. I think the easy answer is Steph, right? No, I'm just kidding. I can't just leave it at that.
We know what we're going to get from him.
Obviously, yeah, we know what we're getting from him, but he's such a joy to watch. I think
Yeah.
we forget how lucky we are as fans to watch him every night. But for me, definitely the young guys. I think Kaminga and Moody for sure. Last year, they were in and out of the rotation a lot, and that could be really challenging as a young player. But Moody always came in and was just always ready to go, which is something Steve has always preached to those guys off the bench. Be ready so you don't have to get ready. And I think Moody really embodies that. But Kaminga for me, with Chris Paul now maybe coming off the bench when Dre's back, Chris Paul, JK, and Moody, and GP coming off the bench. I want to see how that bench unit looks because we know when Steph's off the floor, how does that team look? And then I thought it was interesting too that Steph said in his interview the other day how healthy Clay looks. So I'm really
Mm.
excited to see kind of a healthy from the jump of the season Clay. Maybe get back to some of those nights shooting that we used to see from Clay, and so I'm excited for that too.
Yeah. Clay's probably my favourite player, so to see him back fully healthy, ready to go at the start of the season. Obviously, his start to the season was pretty horrific last season. Then his end to the season, obviously in those last 4 games against the Lakers, were pretty horrific as well. So, yeah, I guess a bit of a side question to kind of the J.K. Moody conversation. I talked about it a couple of episodes ago, and it came up because on a recent Warriors Plus Minus podcast, Tim Kawakami said that he believed that Moody was ahead of Kuminga in the rotation, which surprised me a little bit. I know Moody obviously got a bit of run, played some meaningful minutes in the playoffs. J.K. was axed from the rotation during the postseason. But obviously in the regular season, JK was a big factor, played nearly 22 minutes a game. Who do you think will play more this season? Like if you look back at the end of the season, who do you think is going to be averaging more minutes between those two?
Great question. Yeah, I, that's a really good question. I would hope both of them. I guess my answer would be, I would hope both of
Mm.
them play meaningful minutes this year, especially throughout the year. Like Moody was in and out, and then you kind of throw him in the playoffs. I don't think that's really fair to him to expect him to be ready, but he was, and that's just a testament to Moody. So I really think probably JK though, because I think him and Chris Paul is going to be dynamic in a pick and roll situation. So I'm really leaning towards JK, especially throughout the regular season. But I really hope that Moody we see him more this year.
Yeah. I think both of those guys. I mean, I think Jonathan Kuminga should be playing at least 20 minutes again, if not, hopefully bumping up closer to 25. And Moody, I think he only
Mhm.
averaged about 13 minutes or 13 to 16 minutes, somewhere around there in the regular season. Obviously, had many nights where he was out of the rotation, even had a stint in the G League. Hopefully, that kind of has gone far past where he's at in his career, and hopefully he can get up, averaging closer to 20 minutes as well. Actually, before
Yeah.
I came on here, I was looking at a clip from Anthony Slater on Twitter of kind of JK and Wiggins doing some stuff on the roll
hmm
as a diver to the rim. And I'm just super interested and super excited to see kind of the Chris Paul, Jonathan Kuminga pick and roll potentially off the bench, because I think that can be a really devastating and dynamic factor for the Warriors this season. Obviously, there's been a lot of trade speculation across the offseason, even after the Chris Paul trade. Most recently, we had the kind of Drew Holiday stuff and whether the Warriors would flip Paul and other assets for Drew Holiday. Is there anyone on this team that you think won't be around post trade deadline come February? And if so, why?
Yeah. Again, it kind of ties back to my last answer, which is funny because I want JK to play more, but I think that if Kaminga's not playing a lot more, that could be if Steve just doesn't have him in the rotation. That could be one player that I think maybe just because of young, talented, could get a lot for him. If you're really going to win now and you need to replace him, I think you look for a veteran maybe. I hope it's not the case because I do really like the team that we've constructed and that we have. I really like the guys and cheering for them. So I hope no one is my real answer, but if it had to be someone, maybe JK, just for that win now, get a veteran player.
Yeah, I think everyone would say that of anyone on the team, that's the most likely, just depending on what his role is this season. I do find it difficult with JK because he's only on that 6-7 million mark this season. Is that to get anything of genuine value in return, you would probably have to aggregate him with another salary, and I suppose Chris Paul is the main one at this point. But therefore you're taking a big piece out of your team in order to do that. And if it's just JK straight up, like, I just wonder who else around that $6-7 million mark around the league is really going to be worth giving up a high upside, incredibly talented, two-way player for. Like, I just don't see it. Now, obviously, going back to last season, Wiseman for Gary Payton II, I suppose that was the deal there. But if that were to happen this season and you were getting, trading Kaminga for someone around, similar output to Gary Payton II, I think most Warrior fans would be incredibly disappointed with that, because we've seen a lot more from Jonathan
Yeah.
Kuminga in his first 2 seasons than we ever saw from James Wiseman. And I actually think I saw yesterday Monty Williams saying that Wise is battling for the backup 5 position in Detroit. And so I think that trade is actually looking pretty decent for the Warriors. I don't think Wise is in a position here where he's going to make the Warriors regret trading him. Kuminga certainly could, and I just think getting back someone like, of a similar output to Gary Payton II is going to be a bit of a waste, to be honest, and not something you necessarily want to be doing. Anyway, general expectations for this season. I think the over-under win line is 46, 47 and a half or something like that. Obviously finished sixth in the Western Conference last season. You would hope that they're not as close to the play-in tournament this season, but of course the Western Conference is super competitive with, probably 11, 12 teams that all have a genuine and realistic possibility of, making the playoffs.
Yeah, I think the line's at 47 and a half. You definitely hit that. I would love to just smash the over on that because as a fan, obviously I'm a little biased, but I really think we could be a top 4 team in the West. The two teams, the Nuggets and Suns are really scary up there. The Lakers are going to be really good. But like you said, just avoiding that play-in tournament, I think, is the biggest thing for us. I don't want to be dancing with that again. So top 5 seed in the West would be great, I think.
Yeah. I know, like a lot of teams at this point, it's the optimistic time of the season, right? Where, every team thinks they're going to be better than what they were last season. But I mean, there's a clear directive here for the Warriors. They were 44 and 38 last season, and they've probably got a better roster this season. And also just the fact that you missed Steph for 25 games last season. And most importantly, you missed Andrew Wiggins he played 37 of 82 games. Like, he missed 45 games. Andrew Wiggins has been incredibly durable across his NBA career before last season. If you just put in the fact that, hey, Andrew Wiggins will play 65 plus games this season, unless something else goes horribly wrong, you can probably bank that that's at least 2 more wins just from that simply. And then obviously, as Steve Kerr mentioned as well, the fact that you get Gary Payton II back for a whole season. He obviously wasn't 100% even when he came back for the Warriors. I think he played 7 games at the end of the regular season, then was obviously thrown into the playoff rotation, and his importance can't be understated given he started those last couple of games of the second round series against the Lakers. One thing I did want to mention just off the Warriors for a moment, because it's really been fascinating me recently. I've been talking to a lot of people about it. I just want to go back to the Dame trade for a second, and specifically Phoenix, because obviously from a Warrior perspective, one of the bigger rivals in the conference, we'll see them on opening night. The Nurkic-Ayton move, and obviously they added Nazir Little, Grayson Allen as well. What did you make of that from a Phoenix perspective? Because I didn't like it at all. Some people did love it. It interests me.
Yeah, very interesting trade for them. I don't know what Nurkic will bring to them that Ayton didn't, I guess. Maybe just some veteran accountability because Ayton seemed to take nights off. Defensively, I guess, but Nurkic isn't, like a elite rim protector or someone that can get out and move his feet. I think Grayson Allen is great depth for them. I think that's a really good pickup. Maybe even Nasir Little too, but I just really think that's who they got, right? Nasir Little?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so I just think that from a depth perspective, it's good for them. But again, I thought Ayton was pretty good. I know there were some issues with him in the team, so maybe it was just kind of like a Jordan Poole situation, just moving on from that. But yeah, the Suns are going to be tough this year for sure.
Yeah, there are certainly. I mean, I've said the whole offseason. I think in terms of the West, Denver clearly deserves to be the favourite, undoubtedly, after winning the championship. But aside from that, you've got Phoenix, you've got the Warriors, you've got the Lakers. I like the Mavericks this season, to be honest. I think they're going to be much improved. But you can go down the list. I mean, OKC are going to be a competitive team with their talent on a night-to-night basis. So, as I said, there's plenty of teams here, probably 11, 12 teams that could really have a genuine shot at the playoffs. Anything else that you would like to add at all before we finish up? Where can we find your work and on Twitter as well?
Yeah. So you can find my work on Blue Man Hoop. And then my Twitter is Gamble_Griffin3. Follow me there if you like Warriors news and hoops. I'll be posting a lot more as the season starts. But yeah, thank you so much for having me on. This was awesome.
No worries. Thanks, Griffin. We'll have to have you on as when the season gets underway. And other than that, guys, if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do that. Plenty more Warriors content coming as the season gets underway here on Saturday with the first preseason game against the Lakers. Looking forward to that. Other than that, guys, we'll see you on the next episode.